Olivia lived in a weathered house on the edge of town, surrounded by maple trees whose branches brushed against her windows on windy nights. Her life was simple, yet quiet to the point of loneliness. She worked as a librarian at the town's public library, a place filled with soft lamplight, the faint smell of paper, and the sound of pages turning. The world of books was safe, steady, and unchanging, and in many ways Olivia had hidden herself inside that safety. Her friends sometimes teased her, calling her the girl who prefers novels to people. She smiled at their jokes, but secretly wondered if they were right. Love, in her mind, belonged to others, to the couples walking hand in hand by the river, to the characters in the novels she shelved every day. But everything shifted one autumn evening. As she checked her mailbox, Olivia found the usual assortment of bills and advertisements, and one unfamiliar envelope. It was cream-colored, sealed with care, with no return address. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, the kind she had only seen in old letters preserved in the library's archives. Curiosity made her open it on the porch beneath the fading sunlight. The words inside stole her breath. Your laughter is like morning, spilling light across a sleeping street. I have never seen a dawn brighter than the one I glimpse in your eyes. Her pulse quickened. Who would write something so tender, and to her? Olivia pressed the letter to her chest. For the first time in years, her predictable life felt touched by mystery. The letters came again the next week, and the next. Always the same handwriting, the same elegance, the same heart-stirring poetry. You are like a garden after rain. Secret scents awaken in your presence, and I find myself lost in them. Even in silence, your voice echoes in me, like a song that refuses to fade. Each letter seemed to know her, as though the writer had studied not only her appearance, but her essence. Olivia began to anticipate them. Her evenings grew brighter, her heart raced at the sound of the mail slot creaking. Her co-workers noticed. "You've been glowing lately," one of the librarians teased as they sorted returned books. "Someone's got a secret," another added with a smile. Olivia only laughed it off, unwilling to share the truth. The letters felt too fragile, too precious. If she spoke of them, she feared they might vanish. What puzzled her most was not the words themselves, but the intimacy behind them. Whoever wrote them knew her laughter, her voice. The realization both thrilled and unsettled her. The fourth letter was different. It wasn't only poetry, it carried a clue. The writer described a little coffee house in a neighboring town, a place known for its stained glass windows and shelves lined with second-hand books. The description was so vivid, Olivia could almost smell the cinnamon pastries. She remembered the cafe. She had visited it years ago during a book fair. Could it be that her admirer was inviting her there? That Saturday, Olivia boarded the morning train, her heart beating with nervous excitement. She wore her favorite scarf, as if dressing for someone unseen. The cafe was just as the letter described, warm light streaming through colored glass, the air rich with a scent of roasted beans and spice. She chose a small table by the window and waited. Hours passed. Strangers came and went. Each time the bell above the door chimed, her heart leapt, but no one approached her table. Just as her hope began to dim, a waitress delivered a folded envelope on a saucer. You search for me in distant places, Olivia, but perhaps you should look closer. Her fingers trembled. Closer? The word haunted her all the way home. The letters began to guide her not only to distant places, but to pieces of her own life. One led her to the park with the stone fountain, where she had spent countless afternoons as a teenager, reading under the shade of old elms. Another pointed her to a little bookstore near the train station, the very place where she had once bought her first copy of Pride and Prejudice. A third carried her up to a chapel on the hill, where candlelight glowed against stained glass, painting the floor in colors of ruby and sapphire. At every destination, she found a letter waiting. It was as if her admirer walked just a step ahead of her, always unseen, yet intimately present, and the words grew more personal. I saw you once in the library, your fingers tracing the spine of a book as though it held a secret. I have watched the way you cradle a cup of tea with both hands, drawing comfort from its warmth. I have been near you longer than you know. Olivia pressed the paper to her lips, overwhelmed. These were not the words of a stranger. This was someone who had been part of her world all along. One chilly evening, Olivia returned home later than usual. The porch light glowed faintly, casting golden halos on the wooden steps. And there, waiting at the top of the stairs, was Matthew, her neighbor, her quiet companion in countless small moments of life. He held an envelope in his hand. His expression was uncertain, his shoulders tense, as if bracing for rejection. "Olivia," he said softly, "I can't hide it anymore. It's me. I wrote the letters." The world seemed to tilt. Matthew, her neighbor, the man who had fixed her squeaky gate, carried groceries for her on stormy days, and left baskets of apples on her porch each autumn. He had always been there, steady as the seasons, and she had never noticed. He handed her the envelope. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. Love does not always come from far away. Sometimes it waits only a step from your door, longing for the moment it is finally seen. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that the truth had been beside her all along. Olivia's lips trembled into a smile. She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his in the softest gesture of acceptance. "You could have just told me," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Sometimes," Matthew replied, his voice low and tender, "it's easier to write what the heart feels than to say it aloud." And in that moment, she recognized the same voice she had read on paper. Only now, it was alive, warm, standing in front of her. That night they sat together on her porch, under a blanket of stars. No more envelopes were needed. The letters had done their work. They had led her home. To him. Olivia never threw the letters away. She tied them with a ribbon and placed them in a wooden box on her bookshelf. Sometimes, while shelving books at the library, she would think of them and smile. They no longer felt like riddles, but like chapters of the story that had changed her life. And every morning, when she woke to Matthew's voice or laughter, she remembered the first line that had stirred her heart. "Your laughter is like morning." Only now, she never laughed alone. Winter came softly to the town, dusting the rooftops with snow and frosting the windows in intricate patterns. Olivia and Matthew spent long evenings together in her cozy living room, the fire crackling, the world outside hushed by the blanket of white. They talked about everything: books, dreams, memories, discovering more in each other than either had expected. Matthew had always been thoughtful, But now Olivia noticed the small ways he showed his love, leaving her favorite tea by the library counter, slipping little notes in her coat pocket, bringing her wildflowers he found on his walks. And Olivia, in turn, laughed more freely, carried warmth wherever she went, and began sharing parts of herself she had once kept locked away. One evening, Matthew handed her a small envelope. Olivia smiled, thinking it was another poem, but when she opened it, she found a ticket for a weekend getaway to a coastal town they had once mentioned in passing, along with a simple note. "The world is bigger than the letters, Olivia. Let's discover it together." They traveled to the seaside, the crisp air carrying the smell of salt and pine. Matthew insisted on taking her to quiet beaches, hidden coves, and a lighthouse perched high on a cliff. They collected shells, watched the sunset paint the sky in pinks and purples, and shared stories late into the night, the gentle rhythm of waves as their soundtrack. One evening, as the stars blinked into existence above the lighthouse, Matthew pulled Olivia close. "Do you remember the first letter?" he asked softly. "I do," Olivia said, smiling. "I couldn't imagine then that the author was standing right beside me." "Neither could I," Matthew admitted. "But now, every letter feels like a promise we're still keeping." That night, they walked along the cliffs, the ocean stretching endlessly before them. Olivia realized that love was not just about discovery, but about presence, being with someone who saw you, really saw you, every day. Back in town, life returned to its usual rhythm, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Olivia and Matthew found magic in small moments: morning coffee on the porch, a shared umbrella in a sudden rain, quiet library afternoons where they read side by side. Matthew even started leaving tiny handwritten notes among the books at the library, just for her to find. "I saw your smile today. It made the Dewey Decimal System feel poetic." They laughed at such silly notes, but each one strengthened their bond. They also began exploring the surrounding countryside, hiking trails lined with autumn leaves, picnicking in hidden meadows, and photographing sunsets to remember the fleeting beauty of the world together. With every journey, every shared laugh, every quiet evening, their love deepened. Letters had brought them together, but life itself, messy, beautiful, and unpredictable, kept them close. One rainy afternoon, Olivia found herself alone in the library, holding the first letter she had ever received. She traced the words with her finger, remembering the nervous thrill, the longing, and the wonder of discovery. Matthew appeared beside her, holding 2 mugs of steaming tea. He leaned against the bookshelf and smiled. "Thinking about old letters?" he asked. "Yes," Olivia admitted. "They brought me to you." "And now?" "Now," she said, laughing softly, "I don't need letters to feel your love. It's in every small thing you do, every glance, every touch." Matthew took her hand. "Then let's keep writing our story every day." And so they did, through little notes, shared memories, weekend trips, and quiet evenings, crafting a life that felt like the perfect continuation of those first secret letters. Love, Olivia realized, had always been close, waiting patiently for her to notice. Spring arrived with soft rains and fresh blossoms. Olivia and Matthew's life was joyful, but not without challenges. Work schedules clashed, and sometimes they disagreed on seemingly minor things: which books to read next, whether to spend a weekend traveling or relaxing at home, or how to handle small misunderstandings with neighbors. One evening, after a long day at the library, Olivia arrived home to find Matthew frustrated. He had tried to fix a leak in her roof, but the water had only worsened, dripping onto the floor. "I just wanted to help," he said, shoulders slumped. "I know," Olivia replied softly, "but sometimes things don't go as planned." They stood together in silence for a moment, realizing that even love required patience, understanding, and forgiveness. A few weeks later, Matthew received an unexpected job opportunity in another city. It was temporary, just a few months, but it meant that they would see each other less often. Olivia felt a pang of worry and loneliness, though she tried to hide it behind her usual calm demeanor. Before leaving, Matthew handed her an envelope. "Open it whenever you miss me," he said. Inside were letters, one for each week he would be away. Some were short, some long, some silly, some heartfelt. Each letter reminded Olivia that even distance could not diminish their bond. During those weeks, Olivia found herself carrying the letters everywhere, reading them on her lunch breaks, rereading them before bed. She laughed, cried, and cherished each word, realizing that love could transcend miles. When Matthew returned, they planned a small trip to the countryside. Walking hand in hand through fields of wildflowers, they shared stories of the time apart, moments they had noticed the world differently, things they had learned about themselves. "Being away from you taught me patience," Olivia said, smiling. "And I learned that no matter where I go, my heart always finds its way back to you," Matthew replied. It was in these quiet moments that they truly rediscovered each other, not as they were at the start, but stronger, more aware, and more in love. Summer brought warmth and laughter. Olivia and Matthew celebrated the anniversary of their first secret letter with a picnic in the park, where it all began. They shared stories, jokes, and quiet moments, marveling at how far they had come. Matthew held Olivia's hand and whispered, "Do you remember the first letter?" "I do," she said, laughing, "and I remember how I searched for you everywhere, not realizing you were right beside me." "Love has a way of hiding in plain sight," Matthew said. That day, Olivia realized something profound. Love was not just in grand gestures or poetic letters. It was in the everyday moments, the shared smiles, the small acts of care, the unwavering presence beside one another. Life continued with its ups and downs, as it always does. There were challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of worry, but Olivia and Matthew faced them together, learning, forgiving, and growing. They still wrote notes to each other, tucked into books, left on kitchen counters, or slipped into pockets. But now those notes were not secret or mysterious. They were reminders, tokens of a love that had endured, deepened, and matured. Every morning, Olivia woke to Matthew's smile. Every evening, they watched the sunset together, knowing that the truest letters were written in shared moments and silent understanding. And sometimes, when Olivia held one of the old letters from the very beginning, she would smile and think love had always been close. She just had to open her eyes to see it. A few months later, Olivia and Matthew found a charming little house on the edge of town. Not far from the library, not far from familiar streets, but with a garden large enough for flowers, herbs, and a small fountain. Moving in together was an adventure. They painted walls, hung shelves, and slowly made the house their own. Matthew would leave small notes for Olivia, tucked into drawers and pockets. "Don't forget to smile today. Tea is waiting. Love, M." They created small traditions: Sunday morning walks along the river, monthly picnics in the park where the first letters had guided Olivia, and nightly rituals of reading together before bed. Every season brought its own rhythm and joy. Autumn remained their favorite, reminding them of the first letter. Olivia loved how Matthew would throw her into piles of golden leaves and how they would laugh until their sides ached. Summer brought beach trips. Winter brought cozy nights by the fire. And spring brought long hikes through blooming meadows. Even in the quietest moments, sipping coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise, or listening to the rain against the windows, they found magic. Their love was no longer a secret. It was a presence that filled every corner of their lives. On a crisp autumn evening, Matthew took Olivia back to the park where the fountain first guided her to his letters. The air smelled of damp earth and falling leaves. He handed her a small envelope. For the girl who followed letters to find love. Inside was a short note. Meet me by the fountain at sunset. When she arrived, Matthew was there, holding a small velvet box. Kneeling, he opened it to reveal a simple yet elegant ring. "Olivia," he said, voice steady and full of emotion, "I've loved you from the very first letter, and every day since has only made that love grow. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, laughing through her joy. "Yes, of course." The fountain's waters sparkled in the fading light as they embraced, knowing this was not the end, but a new beginning. They planned an intimate wedding in the library's courtyard, surrounded by friends, family, and the books they both loved. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with vows written from the heart and shared under strings of fairy lights. When Olivia walked down the aisle, Matthew's eyes glistened with the same warmth as the letters he had once sent. When he took her hand, the world seemed to pause, filled with the quiet magic of a love that had endured time, distance, and uncertainty. Afterward, they danced under the stars, their laughter blending with the gentle rustle of leaves, their hearts full and steady. Years passed, and life brought the usual challenges: work, errands, and the occasional disagreement, but Olivia and Matthew faced everything together, their love stronger for every test it endured. They still wrote letters to each other, but now they were not secret, just little reminders of affection. Sometimes tucked in books, sometimes left on kitchen counters, sometimes in envelopes on rainy mornings. Each note carried the same tenderness, care, and poetic touch as the very first letters that had brought them together. They raised a home filled with warmth, laughter, and quiet joy. They traveled, explored, and celebrated life's small victories side by side. And on quiet evenings, Olivia would hold Matthew's hand and remembered that the love she had once sought in distant letters had been beside her all along. Because love, she realized, is not always found in grand gestures or hidden words. Sometimes it's waiting patiently, right where you least expect it, asking only for you to open your heart. And in that heart, Olivia knew it would stay forever and always.